So my name is Maria Barnes. I am the chapter president of Access Lunchtime. And today's presenter is Peter Cole. And Peter, you told me that you're not really the president because they don't have presidents in UK. So tell me what your official title is.
Director.
Director of Theme My Database. And he's going to speak today about themes in Microsoft Access. So without further ado, go ahead and start. The rest of you, I would ask, if you are not actively asking a question verbally, please make sure you're muted just so we can have less background. And there is a chat that you can open to ask questions via chat, and I will monitor that and interrupt Peter as needed. Otherwise, we will have a Q&A portion at the end of today's presentation. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Okay. Right, you can all see my screen, hopefully. Right. I'll just go through a quick introduction to themes. Microsoft have managed to confuse the world a little bit about themes, as within Office there's two distinct features called themes. The first one is the Office theme, which changes the color of the application. If you go into File, Options and General, you'll see a list of Office themes. There's 4 options. There's dark, light, colored. Those are not the themes that we're talking about today. The other themes are an easy way to change colors and fonts with one click. They were originally introduced in Word, Excel, PowerPoint in 2007. That's when Doc changed to DocX. And Access had its own themes in 2007, but they were changed to proper Office themes in 2010. Themes can be used in ACCDBs, but not in MDB format databases. We'll just open up a sample here. And what we have is a theme. Has 12 base colors and 2 fonts. I'm not actually showing you the fonts separately. They are just in the header and the detail here.
Scholar Henry has more detail.
Right. That might not sound, hello. That might not sound like a lot of colors, but each one can have 99 darker versions and 99 lighter versions. So there's actually a large number of possibilities that you can set. If we go, before you want to use themes, the thing to do is to set the quick access toolbar to have the theme gallery on it. So if you go into right hand button there, more commands, all commands, and then it's in alphabetical order. So right down near the bottom here, we have themes, and it's this one here with the icon on it, but you want highlight that and click add. I've already got it there, so I don't need to add it again. Don't need to open and close it because I've already got it loaded. By having it here, we're able to change our theme actually with the form in form view. Normally the theme gallery is only shown when you're in design view. So as you can see, as we slide around, the colors are changing. Also, we're changing the fonts while we go. If we close Access, we go in again, the colors have stayed. Actually, the theme is stored in the MSys resources table. So if you distribute a database, you don't have to provide the theme as a separate file. what I would say is don't bother trying to edit the theme in the MSys resources table if you feel adventurous, because first off, it's an attachment field, which makes it interesting to play around with. But secondly, because if you do, then Access often automatically corrects the changes you've made. So, although you can use themes without knowing anything about them, how they're stored, I'll just go in a little bit of background. The theme is in a zipped file with a THMX extension. And we'll just move away from Access for a moment into Word. Got a Word document here, got hardly anything in it. Word documents are in fact zip files. They just changed the name to docx. If you were to change it to .zip, you could unpack it. If you've done any ribbon modifications, then you'd know that already. Rather than changing the name, I use 7-zip, which some of you may have found. It's a free file extractor because we can go straight in, open the archive without renaming. Go into Word, and go into Theme. Then we'll find the actual theme file. It's all in XML. So if we click and open that, then that appears in Edge. And we can see we've got our 12 colors. So there is some hex codes in there. And then underneath that, we've got the fonts with a lot of international variations of what they would be if we were using a different language. So we'll close that, and we will close that. Right. Okay. Now we're going to open our sample forms again. Oh, still got it open. Okay. We have another form in here, which is called example. So that's just a bit of a form with a few controls on it. We're going to go into design view. Now, I don't know whether you like the light colored labels, but I find them a little bit annoying being quite so light. If we look at the properties, we'll see it's got a themed color on the for color, which is text 1, which is lighter 50%. We edit that, we take out that 50%, change it. You can see that our color has changed to full black. Now, if we look at the form header, we'll see that they've chosen text 2 as the background color to the header. Interestingly, they've chosen text 2 for the, there we go, for the for color, the label as well. Obviously feel that it looks right. I don't like that color, the same font, the same for text and background. So we're going to change that. We're going to change this back color, and we're going to select our colors from the theme colors here. So we've got the basic color, which is the one which is appearing over here. So accent 1 is this green here. Then we've got 80% lighter, 60, 40, and then 25% darker and 50% darker for each of the accent colors. So let's say accent 2, 60%. So we've got a nice green color here. We'll say that's 2. Right, so let's make that 50. So you can tone it down a bit. That all seems a lot easier than going through hex codes, and it's readable because it's lighter and darker. Themes are using the hue, saturation and luminescence color model rather than RGB, which everybody's familiar with. Don't know whether people have met HSL before, but it's just another way of describing colors. It's been around in Access since at least 2003, possibly even earlier. If we go into Color Picker, it's on the More Colors, Custom Themes, we'll find this color model here. HSL is one of the options in there. As you change the saturation, it stays green, but it's a different lightness or darkness. So that's the way that the theme is working, is choosing a color and then going up and down that lightness. We'll cancel that. Okay. So using color with themes is all about relative darkness and lightness rather than the actual color, because you change the color by changing the theme. Because we can change this header here. We're just going up here, choosing different theme. That means you don't have to worry so much about what the theme, what the color is, because you can change it very easily. That's one change, and then that's global throughout your whole database. Now, if we look at the header label property, if we look at the font here, the font name, we'll see it's got the header bit as a suffix. As we change our theme, we can see that the font actually changes as we move around the themes. So rather than changing to a specific font in your database, if you set as a themed font, then you can just change the font in your theme. So you do the operation once. If you want a different font, you can change the theme to change the font throughout the whole of the database. I'll show you how you can create a theme with some different fonts in. Just click when you're in design mode, we have the fonts available. So we can just change this. You can see that changed instantly to the different fonts. Now, if we were to close our database, well, we'll save our color, otherwise we're going to lose the color. So we go back into our sample database. Have we lost our font? Looks like it. Oh no, there it is. It is right. Okay. So we've got our fonts, and it's using the Arial black, the body Arial. If we were to change theme, it would lose that custom setting that we've made. So what we have to do, we have to go into the themes gallery. This is the same as the one on the quick launch. It's just because we're in design mode, we've got this second copy. If we go save current theme, we'll open up a file saving box. If we look at the top here, we can see that it's actually storing this theme in the App Data Roaming Microsoft Templates Document Themes folder. You need to leave it in there when you save it. Don't change that, because that's where Access will look for themes when you're trying to find them. Give this some sensible name. New theme 1. Save it. Now, if we come back to our theme gallery, we will find it's put that in alphabetical order. It's got that for us. So we could now use that theme in any database that we liked with this different font in it. Okay. Now that theming procedure is, or changing the font procedure is a little bit interesting if you forget. So I have an add-on or a free program called Theme Maker, which allows you to change fonts easily. I'll go and show that if we have time later on. Okay, now if we go back to our form, just going to move this out the way a bit. Look at our command button. We've now got hover and pressed, which are these are the defaults for an Access 2013-16 version of the database. So we've got accent 1 lighter for hover color 60% and accent 1 darker 25%. So if we change the colors, that becomes more distinct of what's going on. Accent 2, say, and accent 6. When we go back into form view, now when we press, we get that color. Obviously didn't change that. Right. As we should have got the explanation there. Both green, so there's not enough distinctiveness between there because of the theme that we're using. Now if we choose make that accent 5. And I've not got a space in there. That's the reason we got a problem there. That's better. Right. So we've now seen roughly how themes work, what you can do with them, what you can change in terms of some of the properties. We're going to have a look at updating an old database. Now, unfortunately, when you save an MDB as an AccessDB, no doubt you've all found out, it doesn't do anything with your properties in terms of theming. It just leaves them exactly as it was. Sort of probably makes sense, but also a little bit inconvenient because you're missing out on some of the new functionality. And it's been around for 11 years now. So what we have to do, we have to write code to update all the properties to themed versions. So we're going to use the form here, my sample with icons made for the webinar. I'm going to open this and just to prove it's all live. That's the MDB version. Save as the AccessDB. Put it in the right location so I can find it. I always like to close the database and then open it again Don't know whether it's necessary, probably not, but so we've now got our old style form. We move around our theme gallery, nothing happens. So rather than wasting time typing in some code, I've got it set up in another database, and I'm going to use transfer database command to bring the code in. Couldn't actually put it in the MDB, it's in another AccessUserDB because it's got theme values in it and therefore is not acceptable in an MDB, or certainly we couldn't compile it. Okay, so it's imported 3 modules. So we're going to look at some of the code to set the properties. The base colours are numbered 0 to 11 for our 12 colours. Background text 1 is 0, background 1 is 1, text 2 is 2, and so on. To make life easier in the code, I'm going to set up an enum, an enumeration for theme colour index, which is the property. There we go. So we'll now be able to use names rather than numbers. Okay. Now, if we want to change some colours, called update controls. So we open the form up in design mode, and then we set a reference to the form. Now I've got a background, I've got a header and footer section here. There isn't actually a header and footer on that form, so I'm going to comment that bit of code out. Otherwise it will error. And I've kept the code very simple, no error trapping. I normally use VB Watchdog, so I don't have to worry about error trapping. So we've got okay, so for set our reference to the form, and then because we've got the reference to the form, we can get at the controls collection, and so we can set go through each for each control in the forms collection. We use the control type property to look at which type of control it is we're dealing with, and then we can set the assorted properties. You can see I have a bit of typo there. Didn't need to put the CTL in there because I've got the width. So now we've got this tint and shade property appearing here. Now the shade relates to darker, the tint relates to lighter. So for every color property, back, fore, hover, pressed, there is a tint and a shade value. 100 means there's no effect. Unfortunately, go back over here. Oh, in the wrong form now. The tint and shade don't appear in the properties of a control. But if we go into the editor and we look at the form and we look at a control, here we go, Command button 4, you can see there is the back shade and the back tint as options. Okay. Now, as far as the fonts go, the fonts on the controls, we're going to set it rather than the font that it came as from our NDB. We're going to set it to the themed fonts, which is 0 for a header font and 1 for a detail font. So we look at which section this control is in, and then we set the font accordingly. If we now just run this code, we can now see that our form has been themed. Very pretty. Okay. Now, just going back to the code, obviously you could, I've kept it very simple, of control type by control type, rather than putting, because obviously some of the controls are, or properties are the same on each. But if you keep it separate like this, then it's easy to work out what you're doing. Okay. So next thing is we've got our database. We've now themed it. And, if we run through all the forms, then we'd be okay. It would look like a themed database. So what happens if we add a new form? So we'll just add a form, stick a control on it, stick a button on it. Go into form view. Now, if we look here, we're not getting our themed values. Which of course is rather inconvenient. So what we need to do is create a normal form. I don't know how many people have delved into developing a normal, unlike Word, where your template is across all, or can be for all new Word documents. The normal form is specific to each individual database. So we've got some code which will create, I'm interested in that form, create the template form. Okay. First thing we do is we create a form and we give it a name. We let Access choose its name, and then we set a reference to that form which it's just created. And then we run the add header and footer command so that it gets difficult to manipulate header and footer if they're not there. You can remove them if you've got them, but much more difficult to add. So we add a bit of height to each of those, and then we just set some colors. If we run our code here, now go and create form. Who knows why it made it that small? Because this one's open. Close that one. Right, there we go. It's created a form, and we can see we've got a header and a footer in it. It's a nice dark theme to make things really stand out, that there's a bit of difference there. This is a standard theme. So we have a header and footer. If we add controls to that, they're not going to have our theme settings on them. So we need to adjust that. Now there is the normal form which has appeared in the forms list. We'll go back to our template creation. We're going to open the normal form, set our reference, set the control, default control to a label. And then we're going to add some properties to the labels. And we're going to do the same with the text box. And we're going to do the same with a command button. Okay. And we will run this code. Now, we'll add a command button. And you can see this has now picked up the properties so that it matches the rest of our thing, our database. So if we create new forms in the database, they will have the themed values that we want rather than what Microsoft has chosen to be the defaults. Any questions so far? Oh. Okay.
Peter, this is Dale. I think Giorgio asked a similar question in the comments. I was wondering, how do you distribute your themes with your application?
You missed that bit. I didn't. You don't have to. If the theme is actually stored in MSys resources.
Okay, so even if it's a custom theme that you created and then saved, because that was what confused me, because you went out and it was out in that app data roaming profile. I was concerned that it didn't, those settings weren't actually in MS resources. Okay.
No, it's made a copy of that for you, so that if you were to annihilate this database from your system completely, you would still have that data, that theme which you could pick up on later on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So yeah, no extra distribution required. That's what's so good about it. Okay. Right.
And just, Peter, to ask the reverse question, it is database specific. It's not like it's application, the whole Access application specific. Then if you create a theme, you need to somehow, and you want to use that in another application, you need to import that into it.
Yeah, and it's as simple as just going up to your theme gallery, choosing the one you want. Say we wanted this beautiful colored one, and that's it. That would then be stored automatically.
Except for if it's a custom one, could you actually add a row to that?
You don't have to.
It's resources, or you have to recreate it somehow.
No, it's done that for you. We've chosen that one, which will, whatever name it was. Hold on, let's have a look. See what I called it. Base colors, because that's just basic colors. So if we now look in MSys resources, there you go. It's automatically added it. So just by the fact of going into the theme gallery and selecting a theme, it's added it there. It's the last one in the list, so that is the one it will use by default. So you don't have to do anything about that. There's no action on your part required at all. If you choose a theme, it becomes stored.
Okay, another question here from Charles. did you replace the existing normal form template?
There isn't actually a normal form that you see. When you create a new database, you don't see a normal form. They've somehow stored it hidden away, as far as I know. So
But in essence, when you create the normal form that replaces the Microsoft defaults,
yeah.
Wait a second now. Does that replace the Microsoft default, or do you just use that normal form as your template for all future forms? The one that shows here.
Yeah, it's using it as a template for all future forms in this database.
So if I create a new form, just by going to create new form, it's going to use the one named as normal as the basis for that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was not aware of that.
No,
Because I named my normal form is named template. But now that I know that I can rename it as normal and it will automatically use that, I will use that when I do my create my forms then.
yeah, then you
That's
don't have
helpful.
to manually copy and paste that form.
Yeah, what I normally do is I just open my template form and then do a save as, and it saves it as whatever I want it to be. But now I can just create a new form, and it'll automatically use that template. That I'll rename all those as normal now.
Yeah.
That's great to know.
Does this work also when you create a form from a table?
I believe it does. I have to look at that. Going to run out of time if we digress onto the normal templates. So okay, let me see where I've got to. Okay, we're going to look at my add-in now, because there's a bit of coding that we've been showing here. There's an easier way of applying these themes, if you like, if you want to. So we've got Northwind. You've probably all seen many times. It's the old one. We're going to save this as AccessUserGroups.org. Yeah, it's going to close that form for us. Need to put it where I can find it. Close that. Now, if we go into this, okay, we're now going to use the theming add-in called Apply Style. Now, because you might have been editing forms in this database, because I don't know what position we're in when we open this, it just checks if there's a form open. It allows you to cancel out of the add-in, so you can save the form so you don't do a risk losing stuff. But we haven't done any changes, so we can say no. It's opened up our add-in. Right, on the left we have styles, which is the collection of the settings that we want to make on this database that we're going to change. The current one, this default here, will make it look like it's a 2013 Access database. Okay. The first step is we're going to analyze the database. It's going to open all the forms in design view, go through all of the controls and grab some information about the properties that are in there. Okay, that's about 8 seconds that takes from the. Yeah. Now click that. It's now telling us that there are 3 fonts being used in this database. There's a number of tables. Yeah. Some fonts, of course, you wouldn't want to change to header or detail font because they are symbols like Windings or Marlet. And there are some other symbol fonts. So at this point, you could transfer it over here. Say if we didn't want that to be updated, we could put it over there and push it back out the way. And we can exclude our startup form if it's really fancy colouring and we don't want that themed. We could exclude it by just clicking that and moving it across. Now, we've been through the normal template a minute ago. This is done an analysis of the labels, text, combo boxes, command buttons, see what size they are, on which size has been used most in the database. So to give some consistency, so to the normal form which it will create, we'll use those sizes so that any forms that you create in this updated database should look the same as your existing ones. Now if we go into analysis, we can have a look, see what colours have been used. If we click on one of the colours, it will then tell us which form and which control that colour's being used on. Just for the background information, 22 forms, 375 controls in, and the same kind of thing applies for fonts. Okay, we just go back to the apply style, choose our default, and we'll theme it, which takes just about the same time as it did to do the analysis. Update, we're completed. So now we have a themed Northwind. As you can see, if we move across, everything is themed. One thing I haven't done is I haven't got rid of this background picture. It's an option which has slipped. I used to have it in, but I've mislaid it for the moment. Go into Design View, Properties. If we just take that picture out, save. It's a bit better. And if we got one with a coloured background there, as you can see, fully themed. Okay, let's as I said, that was using the default settings for Office 2013. If we go back into Addin, we can actually make our own version. Just go through a couple of things here. If we select detail, we can change the back color to any of these colors that we might like. And select a percentage. That will change the sample form so you can see what's happening in the sample as you're doing the thing. You want to change your control. Command box is the favorite one because that's got lots of things. You can change the back color to a green. Okay. The other thing you can do with a command button, of course, is a bit of shape and gradient, touch of bevel. You can apply that and have a look, see how horrible that looks. You go back and change that again and say, oh, no, we don't want that bevel on there. We'll just have the gradient. I missed something there. Never mind. Okay. But that's the idea, is that you could then save your particular settings and then apply that using the same kind of technique that we've just did for the north wind. So rather than choosing default, you choose an alternative type of setting. Okay. Out of that.
Peter, those settings are those all getting written to your normal form then?
No, that's that's part of the add-in. Normal doesn't.
Oh, okay. So if you select those settings and then apply those settings across your database, okay, got it.
Yeah, the whole database will then get set to those settings, because obviously the default settings that Microsoft have chosen in 2013 might not be what you want. Like you might not want your header font and background to be the same color. So yeah, that's part of the add-in application. Okay.
Peter, that looks really easy to use, and love the design and ease of that. Tell us a little bit more about your add-in, how you get it, and
how you get it. You have to wait a week or two. I've just got to put the finishing touches to it. Doing this presentation has revealed one or two little hiccups which I thought I'd covered, but haven't quite. It will be on the website, which I will be updating fairly soon. I've done a little bit of an update saying coming soon today. Now there's another bit which is even more exciting on the add-in, which I think so anyway.
So it's just www.thememydatabase.com.
.co.uk.
Oh, okay. Let me just publish that here. .co.uk.
Okay. I'm going to go into the asset tracking database. This is one of the standard themes which come up when you open Access, and it says you want to create from a template. This is what you can do. I've already done the analysis on this to save a bit of time. Getting to shut those forms down. So we've got the analysis icon, got the analysis there. We've also got icons. Now what that has done is done the analysis on that database and said what icons are used on what controls and what they're called and what size they are.
Just a question here. You said you've already done the analysis. So does the add-in store the analysis in tables in the current database?
No, it adds nothing to your database. It has its own database. The add-in has a database behind it.
Right. So it uses CodeDB as opposed to current DB.
Yep.
For references.
And yes.
So the add-in may have data, analyze data for numerous databases, and it's stored in the add-in itself.
Yep.
Okay,
great. When you go back into that database, you can pick that up again. Yeah, it's in the add-in. It's in a back-end table to the add-in, which it will create in the same folder as the add-in where you first started anyway. So obviously add-in goes into the add-ins folder. But yeah, so what we've got here is all the icons which are used and then on what control they have been used on. Now if we update our icons, they become shared icons. So the picture type becomes shared rather than embedded. The advantage of that is that you can then make one change to the icon and that will go right throughout your database. Every time you use that same icon, same way as theming. So it's a similar concept to that. So you don't have to go through each form if you want to update the icons to one which looks a bit more modern. You just do it once. Okay. The only other thing we have to show is in the time that we've got left, very quickly, the theme maker. This again is just got a little bit more testing to do, but this is going to be free because I'm trying to encourage people to use themes. We'll start off with this thing called facet. Now, say we want to use a background color which isn't white, but it's just got a little bit of a hint of something. So we'll choose background, that will highlight that, and we'll say we want to make it light pink. So if we come down to the slider and then adjust there, and let's say we want to use some different fonts in here as well. We'll use Cambria fonts. We'll save the theme. That's it. It's done. It's made a new theme for us. It's added into the custom theme gallery for us. So now if we come out of here, go into anyone, we'll go into Northwind, shall we? Let's put that nice pink background on that form for us. That would have done the whole thing. Okay, well, that's just about wrapped up for time, hasn't it? So, questions? Hello?
So can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, sorry. I hit the unmute a couple times. So we did, a couple people did drop off. We had as many 15 participants at one time today, which is a decent number. For those of you that are still with us, if you have a specific question, feel free to either type it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it verbally. We have about a little over 5 minutes left here. And I do want to make sure that you give us your contact information if you're willing to before we end here, Peter.
Yes.
Think of questions later. I've got quite a bit of thank yous coming through here. Don't see any other questions. I guess one question I have is there any place that you found with maybe design guidelines or anything like that? You know, if we're going to be creating themes, I don't want to make, for instance, someone who's colorblind not be able to use my database. What are your suggestions for that? And do you have any?
I haven't got any personally, but I know a man who will have, so I can ask him.
Okay. Yeah. And then the other question I would have would be, I just totally lost my train of thought here. Sorry. Hop in, anyone else? I'm sorry, Giorgio. Do you have another question that we didn't answer? I tried to pay attention to it. Retype it if you would. Oh, I think he did answer that. So just to repeat, if you go to a PC where the file isn't saved, you lose the theme if you don't copy the ThemeX file to the PC. And I believe you said that's not true. Please elaborate again.
No, it's buried in the database itself. You don't need the ThemeX file.
So if you save a theme and use it in that database and you copy that to another PC, you've automatically got that theme.
Yeah.
Correct?
It's the same which happens in Word and Excel. That's why I went into the Word bit, showing you that it's actually buried within the document. That's why your simple, that document with 6 words in it is 12K of size, because it's got all the theme information behind it.
Now, I will say that that's not always true with fonts themselves. If a environment doesn't have a font, you sometimes have to add the font.
That is true with fonts, yes.
Right.
I'm not sure what it would substitute in there. That's why the fonts that I've put in my theme maker are actually the ones which are nearly always installed with Office.
So we have questions here about where physically the ThemeX files are saved.
Right.
And how you would use the ThemeX file in a different ACCDB on your own machine. Those are 2 separate questions, I guess.
Well, sorry, I'm trying to think the answer. So they're stored in your app data roaming documents themes folder. So if you're wanting to actually use that on a totally different PC, then you could copy it across manually into the roaming documents folder on the other PC. Alternatively, you take the database with you, you go in and you save the theme to a name, something I hadn't thought about. I'll give it some thought.
Okay, and I encourage you, Giorgio, if you run into something specific as you're working with themes where you feel like, you can't access one that you created on a different machine or something, that you reach out to Peter directly, and maybe he can help you troubleshoot, because your situation might be slightly different, and might be something that he hasn't thought about before.
I do have another thing which I haven't talked about, but I've got a theme extractor which will actually grab the themes out of a database, out of the MSys resources, and make them separate files. So if people are stuck, I can recover things probably. As long as you've got a backup which hasn't been compacted and repaired, because Access strips out any previously used themes. It stores them in order as you call them. Then when you do a compact and repair, it then gets rid of things which are not the last one.
Oh, that's interesting. It only saves the last one used.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. So we are at the end of our time today.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Peter, for your presentation today. It's been very interesting and a lot of information here. I know my knowledge about themes has broadened today, and I'm sure others have as well.